So in class we talked about using qui to ask a question, whom, and although I did say that it was who, we did talk about how this really should say whom. So we're going to add that. And that depends on the usage. In this case, we're going to say it's whom because the subject of the sentence is not qui, it's tu. Okay, so I'm going to teach you a couple more different expressions that use qui at the beginning. Okay, so this is the situation where in English we can put a preposition at the end of the sentence, but in French they really do put it at the front. This question says, à qui est-ce que tu téléphones? And what they're asking is, to whom are you calling? Remember that in French you téléphone à someone. So since we have to say je téléphone à Pierre, we ask the question à qui, to whom, est-ce que tu téléphones? So the à goes first and then the qui. And the same kind of structure we saw before with est-ce que, subject, verb. Okay, another example. De qui? De qui est-ce que vous parlez? Since we know that de can mean of, or in this case about, we can ask the question, who are you talking about? But the French would say, about whom are you talking? De qui est-ce que vous parlez? And the answer you would say de in the answer. Je parle de Jean. I'm talking about John. Here's another one that uses qui. This one is avec qui. My question, avec qui est-ce que tu étudies? Now we're asking, with whom? So in English we could say, who are you studying with? And the French would say, with whom are you studying? Avec qui est-ce que tu étudies? And I would answer this like, j'étudie avec Jean-Paul. Okay? And the last one that uses qui is pour qui. Now don't get this confused with pourquoi. It looks a lot like pourquoi. Pourquoi means why, and it's one word, and it's spelled a little differently. Pour qui, as you might be able to guess, means for whom. So you could use this to say something like, who do you work for? Or the French would say, for whom do you work? Pour qui est-ce que vous travaillez? And I could answer it with, je travaille pour Cranbrook, in my case. Okay, so those are the four that use qui that have prepositions at the very front. Okay, and then we talked already in class about qui as a subject. And this is entirely different because there is no est ce. We don't use est ce because qui is the subject that uses the verb immediately after it. So when you change the question to an answer, you're switching from qui, the interrogative, to a person's name, for example. Qui habite ici? I could answer, Christine habite ici. And really the structure of the sentence is barely changing, because all I've done is identify who is doing the action in this situation. So now the challenge becomes figuring out what question word to use to ask a question to get a certain response. So what we're going to do here is take a look at some answers and see if we can figure out what questions would have been asked to get those answers. So with information questions, questions that get some kind of information and not just a yes or no question, there's always going to be something in the response that specifies what sort of question was asked. Let's take a look at this first one. So it says, j'étudie samedi. I'm looking at this information, samedi. It's telling me when something happened. So I'm going to assume that I need to use the interrogative quand, or when. So I'm actually going to start with that information since I know the interrogative has to come first. And every time we start with the interrogative, we're going to have est ce right beside it. So samedi, as a response, the information turns into quand est-ce que. Now if I answered j'étudie samedi, the person must have been speaking to me. They wouldn't have used je in their question, they would have used tu. So, quand est-ce que tu, and then they would have used étudie with the right conjugation with the S. Quand est-ce que tu étudies? When are you studying? J'étudie samedi. Okay, let's take a look at this next example. The information here is en classe. En classe is a location. So my question word is going to be où. I'll start off my sentence with où est-ce que, and then I'll come back over here for my subject. Again, they were speaking to me, asking me where we speak French. So we need to say vous, where do you speak French? And the conjugation is going to change. Où est-ce que vous parlez français? Nous parlons français en classe. All right, let's take a look at this other example. Il dîne au restaurant à 8 heures. Anytime you see a time given, it's a pretty good guess that it's going to be à quelle heure. That's a pretty straightforward one. So let's start off with à quelle heure est-ce que. Alright, now you might have noticed that I've done something to est-ce que here, and that is because my next word, il, starts with a vowel. À quelle heure est-ce qu'il dîne au restaurant? What time is he having dinner at the restaurant? Okay. Let's try a couple more. Okay, elle chante très bien. Anytime you see any of the adverbs that tell you how well someone is doing something, you're going to be using the question word comment, because we learned that that means how well. So très bien becomes comment est-ce que? Again, I used the apostrophe for the E in elle. Comment est-ce qu'elle chante? How well did they sing? Elle chante très bien. They sing very well. All right. This was a little trickier. Now, I look at this one and I see parce que j'aime voyager. This is actually a fragment sentence, because I like to travel. I could have said something like, I speak French because I like to travel. For the purposes of this exercise, we're just going to have to live with the fact that this is a fragment, okay? So, whenever you see parce que, this is a big red flag. Parce que always is a response to pourquoi. This is because, right? Parce que is because, so we're going to ask the question why. So I'm going to start off with pourquoi est-ce que? My answer, because I like to travel. What could we possibly ask here? Pourquoi est-ce que tu voyages? Why do you travel? Because I like to travel. Elle mange une omelette. So if your information is actually some kind of item or an object, it might be that you're asking what. What is she eating? Elle mange une omelette. So I'm going to turn this into qu'est-ce que. I'm dropping that last E because of my vowel. Qu'est-ce qu'elle mange? Elle mange une omelette. With all the examples that we just looked at, we're not going to change the subject if it's in the third person, il, elle, and il, elle pluriel. But we do need to change the subject from je to tu and from nous to vous to indicate that we're speaking to someone. Okay. Let's try one more page. This is the key page. I'll just give you a heads up. Alright, so the first one that we're going to look at is Nous invitons Alice et Béatrice. Obviously, Alice et Béatrice are people. So we're going to be asking a key question. We're inviting Alice and Béatrice. So the question is, who are we inviting, or who are you inviting? So we're going to start off with qui est-ce que. Nous becomes vous. Invitons changes to invité. This literally says, whom is it that you are inviting? Whom are you inviting? Or in English, who are you inviting? Because we don't say it right. Qui est-ce que vous invitez? Nous invitons Alice et Béatrice. Okay. Céline joue aux jeux vidéo. Alright. There's a couple different ways you could ask this question. One might be, what is Céline doing? Or what is Céline playing? And using qu'est-ce que. But actually, I want to ask the question, who's playing video games? So if I know that joue aux jeux vidéo is the action, and I want to ask who is doing it, we can just change Céline into a qui. and say, who's playing video games? Qui joue aux jeux vidéo? And then we'll change it to whoever is doing it. Céline joue aux jeux vidéo. Okay, in this example, we should have a big red flag as soon as we see a in front of someone's name. You might remember that just a minute ago we learned about a and qui. So I have an a to start my question. The person turns into qui, followed by est-ce que. Je becomes tu, and parle gets an S. To whom are you speaking? Je parle à Sophie. And this last one again, you have pour for either a person or maybe a company or maybe a business. So pour qui is my question. For whom? Pour. Monsieur Dumont becomes qui. And we have est-ce que, in this case, est-ce qu'il travaille? Who do they work for? They work for Monsieur Dumont. Okay, I hope that helped you a little bit understand how we make questions from the answers that were given.